With the release of Season 2, everybody wants to level fairly quickly, and Dopamine Tunnels is going to be your best bet with the information that is currently available to us. As you can see, the density here in Domain Tunnels, or Dopamine Tunnels as the player base uses to call this, is extremely high. Therefore, it's really beneficial if you actually make a build that can deal with a lot of monsters in a very tight space. So, for example, here you can see the Blood Surge Necro with Bone Storm, which is going to help you out tremendously in AoE. And then you also see Corpse Tendrils basically pulling and stunning everything together. And then you just keep spamming Blood Surge. There are already some builds like the Upheaval Barb, for example, or the Chain Lightning Fireball Sork with the Fireball enchantment, for example, that kinda specialize on farming Dopamine Tunnels over and over again for a huge amount of experience. In Dopamine Tunnels, if you're playing hardcore, you gotta watch out for these maulers right here, the big guys that are basically swinging that axe, because as you can see here, that's the guy right there. Really careful with those because they can actually stun you for quite some time, and since a lot of monsters are on your screen, the DPS that they are doing is going to be crazy. You will be stunned by these maulers and will take a lot of damage. So that is something that you really need to pay attention to. The rest of the dungeon is fairly easy. You saw right there that we have the Fear Sigil on the ground, as you can see here, but that's not really that big of a deal. But just the stun of the maulers is actually problematic when it comes to Domain Tunnels. I actually see a lot of players discussing that they are going to skip World Tier 3 Nightmare Dungeons completely by just focusing on spamming Dopamine Tunnels over and over again, to basically have a huge density dungeon all of the time, and they forego the Nightmare Dungeon experience buff that they're getting. But obviously, the Nightmare Dungeons, if you were running Nightmare Dungeons instead only, you actually have the time of crafting a sigil. If you don't have one, then you have the downtime, then you have bosses, so you kind of need a more versatile and complete build for actually running Nightmare Dungeons very efficiently. And here you basically just do the same very, very good thing over and over again. So you can actually see that the average experience power is probably going to be a little bit higher in Dopamine Tunnels than it is going to be in Nightmare Dungeons in World Tier 3. That is obviously going to change in World Tier 4 because you at some point need to level your glyphs, which are going to help you with those Nightmare Dungeons. And a lot of speedrunners are actually thinking about skipping World Tier 3 Nightmare Dungeons completely and instead substituting that with spamming Dopamine Tunnels in World Tier 3 over and over again until they are ready for the Capstone Dungeon in World Tier 4. That is especially possible because you will actually get the Potent Blood or the Bloodseekers coming to you in the dungeon. So you need to unlock the seasonal questline, and then you probably can spam Dopamine Tunnels over and over again. Just the first part, as you can see, if you encounter the second part here, you're basically done with the dungeon and probably need to reset over and over again. So I'm really curious how the race is going to work out, or the fastest strategy is going to be. This is definitely something that is very mind-numbing and takes a lot of toughness actually to go through. Again, the very positive part about this is that you can specialize your build for exactly this dungeon because you actually don't have any variety in the monsters that you are encounter or the type of damage that you need to deal, so you don't even need any single target DPS in your build when you are running Dopamine Tunnels. Therefore, you actually have more resources to invest in your AoE damage, making a very highly specified build probably a little bit more efficient than running Nightmare Dungeons over and over again, but it's definitely way less fun, and I don't even know if it is for real going to be the quickest way. But what everybody agrees on is that this leveling method is going to be the fastest thing for leveling from level 1 to level 46 or something, 44, and basically until you are ready for your first Capstone Dungeon. It's very important that you include the events to get some gear, because again, the drops in Dopamine Tunnels are very bad and you don't really get that much gear. So actually doing the events that are being buffed in Season 2 is going to be extremely important to be competitive. People are actually getting from level 1 to the capstone dungeon in around 1.5 hours on Necro and Sorg, for example. I've seen Karn doing it in 2 hours on Barb, so that's really impressive if you ask me, and it's definitely a welcome thing because then the leveling to 100 is not going to take that much time anymore. So I'm really happy with the change, especially the early parts are not really that interesting. So I'm happy that we actually got a way to level very quickly in the earlier parts. Now, if you like content similar to this, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and I'll see you next time.